Bannerlord beta version 1.2 has just been released on Steam, and I don't say this lightly. I think this is probably the largest patch we have ever received for the game, even surpassing the launch patch for Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord version 1.2 has come with a whole wealth of new changes. I like to almost call this the mod patch, because what Tale Worlds have done is implement a whole wealth of mods that people have been requesting and really enjoying into the actual base game. Now, of course, to give Tale Worlds their credit, I'm sure they always intended this type of stuff to make its way into the game at some point, but I can only imagine, seeing how popular some of these mods are, probably pushed them to go ahead and implement them a little bit sooner. And what I mean by mods, by the way, is they haven't just gone ahead and ripped and copied these mods, they've implemented it in their own way, in their own system, which is obviously extremely positive, because this is only going to improve these later on down the line, when modders who say make certain mods that are very similar to the stuff they've implemented can then use that foundation to build and improve even more. So a real quick overview for those of you who just want to kind of get a quick glimpse of the patch itself. They've implemented a new way to target enemy formations in a battle. They've implemented new weather systems in the game that actually have causing effects on both the campaign map and the battle map itself. They've gone ahead and reworked how workshops are. You can now go ahead and do a whole wealth of extra things, which is really exciting, giving us a completely new trade loop. They also have reworked battles and how they actually function. They are much better now. And on top of that, they've also implemented brand new maps, brand new hideouts, and just a ton more. This is just kind of like the footnotes of the patch, and now we're going to dive into it in its entirety. So let's start off with what I think is probably the most exciting feature in this update, and that is the introducing formation targeting. This system allows players to target specific enemy formations with one or all of your allied formations. Targeting is done by using a charge or engage order, and by simply looking at the enemy sigil and giving the order to attack. There is also new UI for this feature, and the blog post says that your units will attempt to attack the target if possible. They'll focus them, but they also won't ignore other units attacking them. If they're getting attacked by a unit you haven't given the order to fight, they will still obviously protect themselves and act as a defender would. And this feature has been requested for so long, and I'm so thrilled that it is now in the game. This is going to make having multi-formations really exciting. You can now split your infantry up and use them to outflank the enemy and just solely charge after the enemy archers and focus them down without infantry doing all these weird things. Cavalry can now be used so much more effectively, because previously when you would charge cavalry into enemy formations, they would just chase the enemy horses back to their formation, charge into the front lines and just get slaughtered. Now you can simply set your cavalry to either focus down the enemy cavalry or the enemy archers, and they will actually perform in that way. It is such a cool change, and I think the ability to actually allow your archers to specifically target certain formations is a great addition to this kind of RTS camera style thing that they have gone for, as that was something you couldn't actually do in the RTS camera command mod. So it's great to see them, going that step further and improving these ideas that modders have had. And I think this feature will be especially good in siege battles, where you can tell all your specific units of archers to focus down certain units. That's going to be really good. Whilst we're on the topic of battles as well, they have also reworked the auto resolve calculations as well for these battles now, so that terrain plays an impact on that. For example, if you've got a ton of cavalry and you're fighting in the forest, you're going to receive a pretty hefty debuff to your auto resolve value. For example, horse archers get a minus 30% reduction in their value when the auto resolve is being calculated. So now the AI battles will actually kind of play out kind of interestingly, and that should start to see maps change and certain factions struggling to take on other factions. I think Britannia and Sturgio are going to receive a massive bonus in this, because I think Snow also comes in and does a big deal in that auto resolve now. I will also mention they have added in an insane amount of fixes and crash bugs solutions, so I won't mention all of them. You guys can check out the patch notes, leave a link down in the description. But they have also fixed a ton of issues with the game that if you are suffering from it, maybe check them and see if your issue has been fixed. Next big change that has come to patch 1.2 is the campaign weather. So this is something that we've seen, we've loved in the realistic weather mod, and they have implemented their version of it in the game. But not only is it in battle maps, it's also in the campaign campaign map, and I think they've gone a step above and yeah, really done some cool stuff. So not only are these weather effects visual, they also affect how battles work and how you move on the campaign map. For example, on the campaign map itself, wet and snowy ground decreases mounted infantry and cavalry speed components of party speed by 30%. It also increases the siege preparation by double. This means that if you're in Sturgia in the winter, you're going to be moving much slower on the campaign map, and actually sieging is going to be horrendous. It's going to take double the amount of time. On top of that, if you're fighting in an actual battle and it is wet or snowy, it's going to decrease the max speed of your mount and your mount acceleration by 15%. So your cavalry is going to be way less effective because horses generally rely on that speed multiplier to increase their damage when they smash into an enemy line. And your archers are going to be severely less effective, so when it is actively raining or snowing, your projectile speed and also your accuracy is going to be reduced by 20%, just basically meaning that your archers don't do as much damage because the speed of the arrow also affects how much damage it does. And I think this combination of campaign map and battle map, combining the two, is just so awesome and definitely the way to go about it. It also makes me really excited for modding as well. Like, imagine now that they have these foundations, now they have these weather effects that they can mess around with. They can add in custom weathers and they can add in the effect of them weathers. Stuff like realistic battle mod, I'm sure will have an absolute blast with this. But even think of something like the Old Realms for Warhammer mod. Imagine the raining blood spell that comes down. You actually start to see the particle effects of raining blood, and your zombies get healed and the humans get burned or something and start taking HP damage. Like, just think of stuff like that they can now do with this weather system in the game. It's really awesome. Now let's take a little bit of a break from the glitz and the glam, all the exciting stuff. We're now going to be talking about warehouses and we're going to be talking about workshops. So Tailworlds have gone in and they've basically given us a completely new loop with our warehouses and actually made having a workshop interactive and fun, and I'm very, very excited for it. So we now have this thing, whenever you own a workshop, you also get access to the warehouse of that workshop. And in this warehouse, you're going to be able to supply your workshop with the raw materials it needs to actually produce goods. You are also going to be able to stockpile the resources that your workshop makes in the warehouse, take them yourself and sell them in a town for profit, for money, which is just so cool. The ability that we now have to actually run a workshop properly, supply it with goods, sell the output of them goods is, yeah, really cool. And you can also adjust this. There is a percentage market in there as well, so if you only want your warehouse to build up to like 50% and sell everything else over that, you can do that, which is really nice. This is definitely a huge step forward for the alternate play styles. You actually have a bit more of a trader lifestyle. Now, I would love to see this taken further. I would love the ability to actually upgrade your workshops, having to provide them with the resources to upgrade. Now that we have the workshop and we have the ability for the workshop to draw from that warehouse, let us actually have to like upgrade the, so for example, I've got a smithy, let us upgrade that smithy by providing the timber and the resources to actually improve the building, give us quests that go ahead and allow us to get even better, to get higher tier goods, and and I think finally giving us the ability to actually require trade skill from this stuff would be very cool. Someone actually in one of my live streams made a very cool point that it'd be amazing if you could set up caravan routes from your workshop, so you actually have a caravaneer selling the goods that are being produced in your workshop to a certain destination. Maybe the further away it is, the more money you get. That would be amazing, and yeah, really, a really cool system. So I'm hoping this is just simply the beginning of the workshop, and they also implement that into the alley crime system as well. Give us more options to do more criminal stuff would be very nice. So that was a lot of mechanical stuff. They have also implemented 6 new battle terrain maps. So again, if you don't know how the battle maps work in Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, is wherever you're fighting on the campaign map has like a associated tile with that battle. total to try and represent the actual campaign map itself. So for example, if you're fighting in a gorge, there'll be a map that represents that gorge. If you're fighting on a bridge, there'll be a map that represents that bridge. And they have implemented 6 new ones to that. It would be nice if they gave us an image of like what's left to improve. Like, I don't know by looking at this image exactly how many, obviously we can see the 6 that they've added, but I don't know how many are already filled in and what's left to do. So it would be kind of cool to get an image which just kind of shows the work in progress, how many we have in total and how many are left to come. They also implemented as well 4 new Bandit Hideout scenes. These hideout scenes are amazing, such cool designs to them. They're all very long and let you fight your way into basically a penultimate defense of the inner layer. It would be very cool though if in these settlements we actually got like maybe the alarm being raised when you're raiding a bandit camp and the soldiers all fall back to this inner layer, because I find by the time I get to it, it's a really cool design, but there's like 1 or 2 people left and there's not really a bit of an engagement. I think it'd be really cool if maybe you start fighting them and they just start falling back to this inner layer holding a choke point, and you get a bit more of a like a mini shield wall, you know, soldier on soldier. I think that would be really cool. But yeah, the 4 new bandit hideouts are very nice additions, just kind of, you know, brightening up the monotony of the game. You know, you're not fighting on the same map, you're not fighting on the same bandit hideout every single time. And as I said, there's one for desert, forest, seaside, and mountain. Kingdom Destruction. Yes, they have finally implemented Kingdom Destruction into the game. So now when a kingdom no longer has any fiefs or castles or cities, they will have a total of 4 weeks to either join another faction or get destroyed. If they don't join another faction within 4 weeks of losing their last settlement, they will no longer exist and they will just kind of fade into obscurity. And obviously the ones who join the other factions will still be allowed to live. But this will be great for the actual game balancing, allowing these factions to no longer constantly raid you once you've destroyed them is going to be really, really good. And I think just make the late game that little bit smoother. I still would like to see improvements to the system, though. It's very cool that we've got this system, but I would like to see emerging kingdoms actually fire, much like when a rebellion happens and a new kingdom spawns. It'd be kind of cool if maybe a subset of the destroyed faction could attempt, maybe they get a little bit longer, maybe they get like 2 months, 3 months to try and attempt to take a castle and forge a new Britannia, a new Valandia in their own colors. I think that would be really cool, because yeah, having just the same 6 factions every time can get a little bit boring, and it would be really cool to kind of maybe, if a faction gets destroyed, they attempt a massive coup and they try to take over certain land somewhere or something and a new kingdom emerges. I think that's something that Bannerlord desperately needs, is it needs the ability for minor factions that aren't aligned, to actually be able to take a castle and start their own kingdom. Crafting has seen another rework as well for probably the 1,000,000th time, so now you can actually start to produce legendary weapons, which I think is really, really cool. It's been kind of cut up into several different types, so depending on your crafting and crafting skill and also the technicality of the weapon you're crafting, you can now go from poor to inferior to fine to masterwork and then finally legendary, which is cool. I really hope they implement some sort of recipes where you actually have to do quests to unlock legendary weapons. I feel like getting a legendary spiked mace or something isn't that exciting, whereas, you know, going on this long quest line to actually achieve a recipe to unlock a legendary sword would be very cool. But now obviously the actual skill of your character and the skill of a recipe is going to determine what level of quality you produce this weapon at. The more skill you have than the recipe required, the more likely you're going to get a higher result on that chart, which honestly I totally vibe with, and I think actually having a skilled smithy with you is going to be cool. And I also feel like they need to implement weapons that can only be crafted. Like a lot of the time in the late game of Bannerlord, I have 1,000,000 gold and I don't really care, you know, what weapons I'm using. They need to give these crafted weapons that little bit more of an advantage in stats, like give us the ability to maybe sharpen certain weapons and improve them. I think that would go a long way to making crafting in the late game a little bit exciting. And I think, as you know, having these legendary weapons that maybe you get recipes for would be a very cool way of going about it. And same with armor as well. Let us craft armor. And then finally, I say finally, there are still tons of other small additions in this patch, stuff like being able to push ladders. I think there's like 5 new quests and reworks to previous quests. They've basically gone ahead and revamped every single perk in improving the game. They've changed up wanderers, so you can now basically build your wanderers up, so your companions up from the ground. They've changed the income now, so it's much better displayed and you can have a better breakdown of how it works. Improvements to the performance of the game, and also just about 1 billion fixes. But the last major thing I want to talk about is how combat works. They've basically gone down the realistic battle mod path, and again, if you don't know what that is, it's a mod that slows down combat and just makes it a bit more realistic. Soldiers aren't as willing to die just charging in like headless chickens. Now, they haven't gone full realistic battle mod, they've kind of gone halfway. So units will now defend themselves dramatically more. They won't just be swinging, they won't just be looking at the sky and hoping for the best. Soldiers actually defend, and this has a massive change to how combat works, because it just slows it down. All of a sudden, these units aren't just getting massacred because there's a back and forth. Soldiers are a bit more hesitant to charge in to the meat grinder. You know, they actually value their life a little bit, and it goes such a long way at just improving the overall feel of battles, and especially large battles. On top of that, they've completely reworked cavalry. The AI is so much better at fighting. I've tested this several times, and the AI cavalry now actually is able to hit their opponents much more often whenever they're charging into battle. They're much more likely to couch their lance, which is, you know, going to result in way more kills on cavalry collisions. And just in general, the AI is much smarter with the cavalry. They actually have the ability to, I guess, line up their targets. Previously, if you've played in the past 6, 7, 8 months, or just, you know, I guess you've played at all, you'll notice that cavalry a lot of the time are just running around and not really, you're kind of lining up a target and going after it. They will just kind of run past the enemy and not strike their weapon. The AI for the horses are much better now. So all of that coupled in with the new targeting system, I think battles are just going to be completely different. And again, I'm just very excited. I think every feature I've mentioned in this video, I'm just really excited to see what modders will do with this now that it's part of the game, now that it's actual like Tale Worlds code structured. There's, you know, mechanics in there, and they can basically just improve on that like they always do. It's so exciting. But yeah, that's going to round up patch 1.v2. If you want to go ahead and download this, it is really simple. You have to, of course, be on Steam. I'm not sure if Epic Games have their own version of this. You'll have to Google it because I actually don't know. I'm sure someone in the comments can let us know. Basically, you go onto your Steam, you go to your Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, you right click on it, you go on properties, you go all the way down to version 1.2, and then you just click it, the game will download it, and then you should be good to go. And then all you have to do to kind of get out of it and go back to a previous campaign is just go ahead and do the exact same thing and click either none, which will take you to the current patch of Bannerlord, or the other version that you were playing. I imagine this patch will probably come out, depending on how many issues arise with it, probably in the next 2 to 4 weeks. And for console people, I think you guys are always a bit delayed because they need to make sure that there's no major issues with it, because it takes a lot longer to update it. Probably come out in the next month and a half, but again, that could be way sooner than that. Again, I'm just kind of, you know, roughballing them numbers. I don't actually know. I have no idea. This is a huge patch, so it probably is going to take a little bit longer. Oh, and that reminds me as well, quickly before I end the video, you now have cheats. Console players now have cheats as well. I believe they've added in something like 15 simple cheats. You can access the cheat menu very easily by pressing a couple buttons. Again, check out the patch notes. I think it's right at the bottom of them patch notes. But yeah, you can now do that, which I think is going to be very cool for those of you who just want to mess around with stuff. And I think all these features are going to be great for the console players. Oh, and then also, sorry, this video just goes on and on and on. There's also been a ton of modding changes as well. Loads of stuff for private servers, which is good, improving the stability, improving the admin controls, which is very nice, and of course giving modders the ability to edit all the stuff that they've implemented in this update. So let me know what you thought of patch 1.2. Are you going to be playing it? I definitely think if you're going to be starting a new campaign, this is probably one to mess around with, but definitely wait until this just comes out of beta. It would be horrible if they dropped a patch that ruined a campaign you were playing on 1.2, but it is definitely worth messing around with, obviously looking at what to do when they do drop this, because yeah, it's going to be big, very exciting. And honestly, I'm massively impressed by this update. I wasn't expecting much, and they definitely surpassed my expectations with this, and I'm hoping that we continue to get content patches like this going forward. If they can keep this up every like 3 to 4 months, I would be very, very happy, honestly. And hopefully next on the agenda, we'll have Kingdom Diplomacy. I think that's something that people have been asking for a long time, as well as just more stuff to do in the late game. Stuff like better city management would be really cool, and just a whole wealth. I think that's hopefully something they'll look at in the future. But yeah, let me know what you thought of version 1.2, and I'll see you guys in the next one.